Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Issei. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei become a celestial dragon? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. The orc members, save for Ria's, Akeno and Asia were climbing the mountain. Ria's planned to have a training at a lodge her family owned. Come on, Issei-kun. You can do it. Just a little bit more. Height, Issei-san. Akeno and Asia cheered him passionately. Kiba walked past him with a plastic full of herbs and spices for food, and Kaneko walked past him with a bag far bigger, at least 3 times than his. Unfortunately, he tripped and fell. Kaido also brought his own bags, although his weren't as huge as Kaneko, but he had 2 or 3 bags on. I'm going first. He left poor Issei behind. He has a long way to go, Akeno commented with her usual 1% smile, while Ria smiled to her. After changing to jumpsuits, Issei, Kaido, and Kiba all went outside to start training. The rest were already waiting there. Luckily, I managed to get both Rainer and Kuroka to be civil while I'm here. He sweated hardly. Last night. About the training tomorrow, Rainer. Could you make sure my parents won't know anything about you, being a fallen and all? And having a girl in my room would really spell doom for me. So, lay low, okay? I get it, but she crawled to him seductively. You'll need to give me enough to last tonight. She put her hand on his cheek. Guess being a fallen angel meant becoming a super seductive girl beyond normal, huh? Fine. I'll sleep with you for the night, he sighed in defeat. Normally, he'd sleep with hands as a pillow on his desk, since she'd sleep on the bed, while Kuroka slept inside his dresser. Keeping 2 girls in his room secretively really took a lot out of him. Why don't we just use some hypnosis, Naya? They won't notice the difference. Anyway, Kuroka morphed to a woman clad in black kimono with yellow obi. As horrible as they are, they're still my parents. Unfortunately, he sat beside Rainer. You say. I can hear their shouts even from outside, you know. I'm wondering how you're able to cope with that. She leaned to him. Yeah. I guess I'm just numb already. He laid his body on the bed comfortably, preparing to sleep. And Kuroka, you stay in my dresser, K? He drifted off to sleep, with Rainer hugging him like a bolster. Okay, Hyoudou, Kaido. No killing each other, get it? Ria spoke. Those 2 were already eyeing each other, Bakuto's ready. After calculating each other's possible moves, they dashed forward, sword colliding. Loud sounds echoed across the forest and they kept on fighting. Kaido dodged Kiba's horizontal/limbo style and countered with a swipe to his feet. Kiba nearly lost his balance and leaped backwards. How about we kick this up a notch? Kiba spoke as he dual-wielded 2 European swords. Okay, Kaido threw his Bakuto aside and created 2 katanas with a grin. They clashed swords once again and now it's a contest of speed. Kaido didn't hold back for the sake of training and beat Kiba senseless. Now, it seemed like a major one-sided slaughter for Kiba and the rest of Orc. Impossible. Kiba fell down and Asia went to his side. He took him down with the oldest moves of his books. You should work on your techniques first, Kiba. He walked away to Kaneko next. She nodded and they walked to the forest. Wait, Kaido, what are you? Rias asked. Kaneko's speed can't be improved exponentially in merely 10 days, so I'll just give her some tricks to use later in the game, he smirked devilishly. HHH can't be helped, huh? So, what I should do? She sighed. Make sure you have plans for defeating that prick, anything that you can use against him. His weakness, secrets, whatever. Just make sure he can't win. Himejima-san, please train Issei and Asia in magic. He continued walking to the forests with Kaneko. Okay, well, Issei-kun, shall we? Yufufu Akeno creepily chuckled. Issei and Asia sweat-dropped, seeing that reaction coming from a sadist queen. Senpai, what are we going to do? I believe Surzuch-sama will try to give Butchu a terrain advantage in the game if he had the slightest bit of care to his sister's marriage. And that would involve Kuo as a place she's familiar with, wouldn't it? There's a big forest there and I want you and Kiba use it to its fullest, he explained. I understand. So, what do I need to do? Simple. You just have to run through the forest without me catching you. If you can do that, you pass. He ran to the forest, leaving Kaneko to prepare. She inhaled deeply and started marching to the forest in standard speed. As she was passing the forest, she didn't even catch a glimpse of him. Then, she suddenly felt prying eyes on her back, trying to make a hole on her. She sweated beads and walked nervously, giving more attention to her surroundings. She suddenly saw a glimpse of moving shadow in front of her and wanted to go back, but she forced her shaking legs to march to the end. Hey, Kaneko. Kaido appeared behind her, but crouched immediately to avoid a heavy punch from Kaneko, blowing a tree off its roots. He smiled sheepishly and apologized to her. Sorry. But you were too vulnerable, Kaneko, he said. Vulnerable? Yes. Since you can't possibly win with numbers, I want to give you hit and run tactic to chip off enemies' forces without being killed. See that tree over there? He pointed to a tree about 20 meters from them. You can spy the enemy and quickly cover yourself from that place. Okay, let's start again, shall we? Kaneko walked back to the starting point. Later, Kaneko jumped on the trees like a cat and she was very aware that time. She sharpened her 5 senses to make sure Kaido wasn't near her. After looking at the trees, she realized that the trees' positions wouldn't do any good to her, so she jumped to ground. Bam, ahhh. She jolted in surprise when she heard such a loud noise from the forest and Kaido's shout from the same direction. Deciding to ignore it, she continued to walk with caution. Meanwhile, Kaido was sitting on a tree with a black-haired woman with yellow eyes. She was in Caesar position and he was scolding her. So, why are you here? Didn't I tell you to stay at home? Come on, I was bored and I found my sister here too. She started with cheerful tone and ended with quite mellow tone. Kuroka, right now, your sister is training to help her master. I think you should respect that, right? Okay, she pouted and watched Kaneko from afar while Kaido went to intercept Kaneko. He ran quickly and silently to her without being noticed and touched her shoulder. Hey, I fail again. Her head dropped again, but he cheered her by saying that her growth was superb. By the way, senpai, why did you scream before? She tilted her head cutely, earning an unwilling blush from him. Just tripped over a branch, he stuttered. Okay. He looked at the setting sun just above the horizon. The sky had started to darken considerably since he last looked at it. He turned back and walked away from the forest and Kaneko followed him. Later, they found a very unusually big mound of potatoes on Issei's plate and quite normal portion of various foods for others. Kaneko, Kaido. Back already? Rias came into the room with Kiba, Akeno, Asia, and Issei. They sat down with a tired sigh, especially for Issei and Kaneko, since their training was harder on them. So, what's with that mountain of potatoes, man? Kaido punched Issei's arm lightly while pointing to his plate. He sheepishly laughed and sighed. You see, I got a little too excited about learning magic. I ended up peeling every potato in that room with a simple touch. He slumped to his chair. And it took a hell out of me too. He reached his spoon and started eating as quickly as possible. Kaido also ate his portion of food and a lot of it too. Jumping around the woods with only physical power was really tiring, after all. By the looks of it, the girls except Kaneko weren't exactly wasted like the boys were. Kiba was better and ready to fight again, thanks to Asia. He finished his meal and held in a burp. Now that we're finished, how about a bath? Rias stood while Kaido was taking the dishes to the sink with Kiba. The bath, Issei frantically stuttered with steam coming out of his nose and wide comical lewd eyes. Ara. Looks like Issei-kun wants to join us. How about you come with us, Issei-kun? I don't mind, she said with a hand on her cheek. You don't mind, too, Asia shyly said. Not really, Rias shrugged. Old perverts should just go die. Kaneko coldly spoke, specifically to Issei who bawled on the floor. Too bad, Issei-kun. Akeno giggled. Later. Taking a hot bath really hit the spot, Rias sighed as the hot water washed away her fatigue from sitting and reading books all day. You're right. This is nice. Akeno slid inside the bath. Asia looked at them and put her hands on her breasts. She pouted in jealousy, earning a concerned look from Kaneko. Rias-san and Akeno-san bodies are very good, she sighed and continued washing her body. If you worry too much, you won't get anything out of it, Kaneko said. The boys were bathing too, save for Issei who was trying his hardest to peek some girls behind a steel wall. Kaido and Kiba only chuckled seeing that pervert checking the wall for a crack or something like that. Come on, bro. Give it up already. The wall is made of solid steel, you know. Or you planning to break them? Kaido tiredly spoke. No. How can you be so relaxed? But you and Akeno-san are bathing next to us and you ask me not to peep, he shouted. I know, but it's a man's job to peep girls. No, it's noble indeed, an act of valor. He raised his fist passionately. Bong. Shut up, pervert. Kaneko's voice was heard from behind the wall and Issei got hit with a bucket full of hot water. Hot. He ran around naked after getting boiled water poured on him. He's so lively, that Issei. Kiba commented. Yep, it's just like him. Dining room. After everyone had finished bathing, they gathered together for Rias to explain about raiding game and Asia about exorcism. Thousands of years ago, devils, angels, and fallen angels waged war against each other, starting the Great War and leaving every side crippled to the point of near extinction. Out of 72 royal families of devils, only a select few remained. However, we devils have very low birth rate and incapable of breeding ourselves a population like it was before. And so, Ajuka Beelzebub, one of the current mass, invented evil P system to restore the numbers of devils and strengthen their power. Rather than having a huge number of infantries, he made it so every royal devil has an elite army of his or her own. Qualities over quantities, you see. Rias explained. What does it have to do with raiding games? Issei asked. Well, it started off as a rivalry between young devils. Like, my knight is better or my rook is far stronger. And thus, the raiding game was made as a way of competing against each other and for some reasons, it ended up very popular in the underworld. By the way, what did the heavenly dragons gave to do with war? I know they're very powerful, but Issei asked. Simple. It took all 3 factions to defeat them and seal them in sacred gears, one being your boosted gear. They wreaked havoc in the battlefield by fighting each other and destroying everything nearby in the process, so they had to take them down no matter what. Rias looked at him. All factions? To stop 2 dragons. Now that's something Kaido commented. You've known about the extent of our abilities, why don't you tell us about yours, Kaido? Rias asked. Yeah, but I've told you all right. Swords. He materialized a sword in his hand. Is that so? Her eyes sharpened. What did you expect? He spoke innocently. Ignore him, Princess of Gremory. A voice boomed from his left hand. Zekro. Now, of all times. Kaido tried to hide his hand. Come on, partner. It would be fine, really. Whatever that runs in your head won't come true so easily, he said seriously. But, no buts. Well, sorry for the intrusion, but it seems my partner needs to snap out of his unusual way of thinking once in a while. What kind of way? Kaneko asked with monotone voice. I believe you want to know his powers, not his mind. Fine. Tell us, Rias spoke. Okay, his powers are quite unusual, so to speak. Hey, summon it already. Zekro mentally slapped him. Fine. Geez, he brought out reality gear. But could you show me your magic? Okay, her power of destruction came out of her hand. Absorb. Her magic was gone and appeared on Kaido's hand. He analyzed it for a while and dispersed it. Then, he walked out. Come with me for a while. It won't take long. He opened the door and faced the mountain. The others followed along to see. Okay, he inhaled and exhaled in a rhythm. His body started to get surrounded by a thick dark crimson mist, and his pupils turned into slits with ominous look on them. That's my power. How in the world? Rias was out of words already, seeing Kaido holding her power of destruction in the same way as her brother. A dark red sphere came out of his hand and he threw it to the ground. Boom. In that instant, the mountain across them, or at least the top of it, was disintegrated to nothingness, almost destroying half of it. Rias and the others felt nothing, as if the mountain had been cleanly cut with a very huge blade or something. Unbelievable. Kibble looked at the former mountain. Horrible, right? A power to copy and custom others' powers into my own liking. I feel bad for the original users. He looked at his hand with grief. Custom? Issei tilted his head, confused. That's right, Sekiryu. This boy here has the power to absorb the essence of others' powers, melded into his uniquely personal power. So, that's it. It's like you see my power of destruction and mold your own power to have the same essence as mine. But that's making an original, not copying, you know. Rias simply smiled at him. I've told him 1,000 times, but he just won't listen. Zekro sighed tiredly. Then, you're originals? Kaneko asked. It's hard to explain. My abilities are more than just copying, but it's also creation. It sits well with his own power, swords and some of his unusual ones. Like what? Bound. A metallic voice came out from Kaido's gauntlet. Rias suddenly felt a bit weak and tried to summon her magic, but nothing came out. I can limit my enemy's power, according to my own. If it's too enormous, I can't bind it. But, it'll cut the enemy's power in half and can't be regenerated by any means. What? Because your power doesn't vanish, but limited. It's like using layers on someone's power. Actually, he raised his hand and her magic came back. Well, I'm also good with magic, weapons and martial arts, but I prefer human magic. That's the gist of my abilities. Kaido shrugged his shoulders. So that's his other ability. Honestly, that white girl. Rias walked inside along with everyone. In the end, you didn't tell them that, huh? I don't have that power now, anyway. For now. Hiba, now I want you to use this. Kaido threw a bakudo at him and slashed a huge stone beside him, leaving a huge crack line on it. To do this, he put his wooden sword on his shoulder. A knight sword must be sharp, but great swords aren't everything. If mastered, you can cut steel with just a wooden sword easily. So let's work on that first. Okay, he obliged, but was starting to slump big time. Kaido laughed lightly and Akeno walked to Issei. Okay, Issei-kun. Use the boosted gear now. Issei obliged and summoned his gear. Then, Akeno told him to use his magic. Issei gaped, which looked very funny. After some teasing and forcing, he gave up. He lifted his gear and charged up a small marble-size red sphere. He charged the gear for about 10 times already. Boost. As I thought, I'm just a noob. He frustrated. Boost. Have confident, Issei. Akeno cheered. Boost. Since Issei was originally a guy with confidence overload, taking a cheer from an Adashiko made him man up quite fast. He cocked his arm back and with a punch, a ray of red beam came out of the sphere. Dragon shot. He shouted. That beam raced through the forest, destroying everything it came in contact with until it hit a mountain beside the mountain Kaido deliberately ruined before. And wow, he got a nice destructive results. That mountain had a massive hole on it, as if a giant with a massive sniper just shot through it for no good reason. Ha! Look at that. I just pulled a Kaido on that mountain. Issei declared proudly. That attack just now, it was equivalent to elites of high-class devils. Rias found her mouth slightly open when she regained her composure. Nice, Issei. As expected of the red dragon. He gave a nice slap to his back. Well, Issei-kun. What were you saying about being the weakest of us all? Akeno crossed her arms under her breasts. Yeah. I'm very sorry, Akeno-sama. He knelt in front of her. Well, now that's settled. How about your training, Kiba? Kaido turned to see Kiba sweating beads and a pile of broken bakudos beside his feet. You can't break a large stone like that with a bakudo without so much power, bang, but you can make a slice if you concentrate all the power into one spot. He said. Okay, he tried again. By the way, Kaneko, spar with Issei, will you? Asia, practice magic with Akeno. Kaido, come with me. Rias gave out instructions and walked to the study with Kaido. So, what did you want to talk about? Could you help me search info about Phoenix? There's still this much. I just can't do it all by myself. She swayed hazily and fell to a sofa nearby. Kaido simply laughed and sat on the floor after yanking a book off that pile of books. By the way, I can see you hate that arrogant chicken, but why are you so opposed to it? I mean, don't princesses do that all the time? He didn't lift his face from the book. She straightened herself and opened her mouth hesitantly until Issei crashed the wooden wall beside her. He quickly apologized and faced Kaneko again. What was that? Well. Then, they laughed together, information be damned. Now, at least. Kaneko, try to spar with him. Rias pointed at Kaido nonchalantly. And Kaido. No swords, just fists, she warned. Hey, he warmed up. Ready? Without her saying go. They exchanged blows, or rather, Kaneko was the one blowing, while Kaido parrying. Kaneko launched a swift kick to his nape, but he dodged by simply sidestepping. Kaneko kept punching and kicking, and when he dodged a punch from her, she elbowed him. Nice move. She tried punching his head, but he grabbed her hand and slammed her to the ground after spinning her in the air. She recovered quickly, but Kaido already ready. He forced a wicked kick to her stomach, sending her crashing trees. He sighed, but Kaneko leaped from a tree above, ready to execute him. Gotcha. He flashed a calm smile full of bloodlust and backflipped, with his legs entangling her fist. He used his hands to stand and threw Kaneko to the ground again, but this time, he was on top of her. I lost. She raised her arms as Kaido's fist was in front of her face. After dinner. Well, guys. I'm going to bed. See you tomorrow morning. Issei yawned tiredly. Kaido and Kiba followed along. In no time, Kaido was already asleep despite Issei's violent snores that kept Kiba from entering his land of dreams. Kaido's pav. I found myself in a dark room with no lights at all. It's usually like this whenever Zekro or some spirits have some business with me. Oh, well. Guess every place had their own haunting ghosts after all. I heard a dim voice cooing from this place. I turned his awareness to full overdrive mode, since that word was quite popular for a painful death specially designed for me. I looked around and found no one. I want to die. That eerie voice spooked me again, but somehow that voice was really familiar. I got the answer quite quickly after he saw a transparent boy sitting on the corner, arms hugging his knees. I walked towards the boy and he lifted his face. I found out why that voice was so familiar. He was him. His younger self looked weary with bags under his eyes, pale skin, and emotionless eyes. He was so thin I couldn't believe that was me. But what really scared me was the fact that I looked exactly like that during middle school. Eyes that had given up on this world. The trait only I could redeem as mine and mine alone. It's better when you didn't come, you know. Because of this guy, I got isolated. Some people appeared from the darkness, yet he felt darkness was better than seeing their ghastly forms, resembling those who had crippled him. And then, a particular girl came out from the shadows and glared at him not with resentment, but disgust. You disgusting creep. Die already. Those words. Those accursed words haunting him without rest, and he felt something inside him breaking down to pieces with their words and curses. Ahhh. I shot up from my sleep after screaming inside that horrendous darkness looming before me, and the reality greeted me. I rubbed my chest, my scars started to tingle again, and I snickered. I will. Pretty soon. Walking out at night had always been a paradise for me. Those dreams. Their intervals were shorter than ever. I steadied my breathing and walked away, still clutching my hurting chest and rubbed my eyes, finding no tears wetting them. He stared smugly at his hands and smirked. He saw his hopeless self on the mirror, his true self, if only he wasn't a great trickster. He walked out and found himself laying down on a field of grass, thinking about what would happen from then on. Kaido. Ria's feet were visible, and she sat beside him. I felt a surge of dreadful feelings of wanting to run away, lock myself in a locker, and waste quietly without harming anyone. But this place was very nice. The grass wasn't very sharp, although I didn't really feel it since I had clothes on, but you'd get what I meant. Kaido. I looked up and saw Ria's clad in white nightgown, which was really, really thin, and glasses on her. She looked down to me, smiled, and sat down beside me. After she finally relaxed on the grass, which would have been hard considering how thin her gown was, she faced me. "Hey, it's rare to see you in glasses. Devils don't have such problems. It's just something I use for style." She put it away. "I guess this shows how accustomed I am to this world. So that's it. You don't want to leave human world, so you're planning to fight that chicken for your freedom. Well, I guess that's one of my reasons. But, no. It's not that." She sat, letting the winds blow her brilliant red hair. "Since I was little, I've always wanted to experience love, true love, without being chained by the name of Gremory. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud of being a Gremory and I love my family. It's just." Kaido sighed and turned to her. "It's lonely being at the top, isn't it? Having to do this and that, with people eyeing your every actions every day, and those absurd expectations really tiring." I finished for her. "Yes. But most of all, I hate being seen as the princess of Gremory. All my suitors. They didn't care about my well-being or who I really am. They just want to get me like a trophy on their shelves, all for extra wealth and influence they'd get from me." She fell down on the grass again. "For me, you being a princess is a part of you, and surely it's something that's shaping you to what you are, but it's also true that it's not everything about you. Outside the castle, you're Ria's Gremory, and I intend to see you as whole. So take pride and live the way you want. That's how devils do things, right?" I smirked at her. She looked shocked at my statement and put her hand on her bountiful chest. Her smile grew wider, and she finally spoke. "You're right. That's just a part of me." She smiled in satisfaction, looking so content for my words. I simply shrugged at her reaction. "Enough about me, how about you?" Oh. I had a bad feeling about this. I looked at your school profile. It said that you're just a normal smart guy with no notes or recording about your status or achievements." So she looked at my sleeping body. She simply stopped talking and put my head on her lap. Honestly, that was my first skin contact with a woman, and a gorgeous one at that. Her thighs were soft and smooth, it was better than any pillow in the world. "I can't see a male like you being so normal." She caressed my hair. "Okay, although that was really nice, I wasn't used to contact with women, so it took all my concentration to not pull a tomato right there and then, causing me to blush inwardly all night before finally falling asleep. I woke up the next day, but it was still too soon for other to wake up. I saw Ria sleeping on my chest peacefully without a care for the world. I lifted her gently, not wanting to wake her up from her dreams, and walked to her room to put her on bed. After that, I went to continue my dreamy journey in my own room. I'm Skip. Normal Pav. "Okay. Let's see how much you've improved," Ria said. Kaneko walked in and punched a large boulder to dust. Kiba sliced a huge stone he couldn't put a dent on, giving it a nasty vertical mark on it. Asia and Akeno just giggled, and Issei was laughing with a comical lewd expression on his face. Kaido walked to Ria's. "Stick to the plan and try to enter the forest. He won't dare to burn you, I promise." "Okay. Now, let's give Riser Phoenix his first defeat," she declared. "Yeah." Her peerage responded. After 10 days of rigorous training, the orc would finally face their first rating game, with Ria's freedom on the line. Even with the advantages Kaido had set for them, the pressure was still great. That being said, Rias and Akeno were relaxed and drinking tea silently. Asia was wearing a nun outfit and Issei was beside her. Kiba with a sword sheathed on his hip and Kaneko with fingerless gloves on. "It is time. Let's go." Everyone. Rias stood up and walked to the magic circle, followed by everyone. Issei closed his eyes and opened it a few seconds later. He looked around and saw the sky was green, and it was a common fact that Earth's sky wasn't green. "Now, we shall commence the rating game between Ria's Gremory and Riser Phoenix. I am a mate of Gremory, Graphia, and I will be announcing this game." Graphia's voice echoed through the room. "Yeah. Give it your all." Kaido's voice also boomed from an intercom nearby. Rias took out some pink light balls and gave it to Issei and the others. "A receiver. This way, we can communicate," she explained, then she put her hand on Issei's forehead. He felt something was released from inside his body and started swelling around his body like flames. "This is your inherent power, Issei. I had to seal it before because your body couldn't endure such power, but now, you can use it as much as you like." She smiled. Akeno and Kaneko went out to set traps and tricks in the forests nearby. They came back to report and suddenly, Graphia's voice bellowed, "Begin." Issei ran to the nearest window and charged up his power. He aimed at the new school building and pointed his boosted gear at Phoenix's base. "Dragon shot." He shouted and shot a beam of compressed demonic energy, blowing up the room effectively. Riser Phoenix's 2 pawns, 1 bishop retired. "Nice." According to plan. Kaido smirked evilly from the announcer's room. Later, Kaneko and Issei were marching to the gym to intercept enemies' advance. They sneaked up and turned on the lights. Well. Ria's Gremory's pawn and rook. A voluptuous female in blue cheongsam stared at them, along with 2 lawless in gym suits. "Issei-san, I'll take care of the rook." You keep those pawns at bay. She cracked her knuckles eagerly. Okay, Kaneko-chan. Issei started boosting his power. Slice apart. The twin lowly pulled out nasty chainsaws with sing-song tone. Issei's sweat dropped and chuckled nervously. Okay, it's time to get separated. They attacked him with those chainsaws. He dodged their attacks quickly to buy time for some boosts. Boost. He smirked evilly and stole a glance at Kaneko, who had her opponent in a Boston Crab. It really hurt for sure, since Kaido did it to him before, and it was hell. Okay. Killer move. He spread his bat wings and raised his gauntlet. Breast break. He lunged at them like a madman, touching their clothes. Then, he snapped his finger and their clothes, underwear included, disintegrated to tiny pieces of fabric. Aye. The victims exclaimed while hiding their private parts. You perv. Enemy of all women. Wahaha, behold, my special move. Dress break. He exclaimed. Announcer's room. Although that was very inappropriate, I'll say that it was original. Sona's queen, Tsubaki Shinra, rubbed her temples. Just say it was gross. He wouldn't hear it anyway. Kaido sweat dropped. Bara, what a lewd move, a voice cooed from behind him. When he turned, he saw Hana with her white jacket and headphones smiling sweetly at him. Hey. Spatial portal. Bingo. Kaido simply nodded and focused on the game again. Riser Phoenix's 2 pawns, retired. But it had to be him. Issei looked at the sky with a smirk. He had finished 3 pieces with 1 dragon shot and they left the gym for Akeno to stand guard. As expected, Riser mobilized all his pieces. Some went to the forest, some to the gym again. All according to plan. Kaido and Ria smirked simultaneously. Boom. Akeno blasted the whole gym with a massive lightning bolt. Since Akeno wasn't flying, she couldn't be seen from the other side of the building. They marched together and met with Kiba. Then, Kaneko leaped to the forests to assassinate Riser's remaining pieces, while Kiba and Issei picking up the leftovers. Riser Phoenix's 1 knight and 1 pawn retired. How many are they? 1 pawn, 1 rook, 1 knight, 1 bishop and queen. Okay. Let's finish this. Knight of Gremory, I'm tired with this game of tag. Let us fight fair and square. A girl's voice echoed through the forest. Idiot. It's like asking Kaneko to slap her. Kaido thought. Very well. Kiba came out. Okay, he'll do. Kaido chuckled inwardly. Say, did Rias make this plan? It's kinda devious, Hana said. Of course not. I made it. Along with her, duh. Wow, she watched. I am Carloman, Knight of Riser Phoenix. Let us fight, Knight of Gremory. Kiba Hyoudou. I accept. They both unsheathed their own swords, and a second later, they were in a deadly bout of swords. When I finally thought I could find a cute boy, turns out he's a sword freak. A blonde girl with drill-style hair came out with a delinquent girl with mask and a girl with a staff. Issei and Kaneko ignored them and kept watching 2 knights dancing with their weapons. Kiba's techniques had improved considerably since his training with Kaido. But that, he was already good enough to overpower her, but because she had a nicer sword, his sword crumbled to dust after a few clashes with her flaming sword. Well, look at that. Kiba charged to the relaxed knight and sliced his newly formed ice sword to her. Having caught off guard, he froze her sword and shattered it effectively. Multiple gears. No matter. We Phoenix rule fire, life, and wind. She threw that broken sword aside and pulled a short sword that created a violent hot vortex of wind around them. That Carloman. Is she planning to burn us too? The calm Kiba's sword morphed again, and this time, it's a sword with a hole on its tip. The hole started to suck the vortex, and with a gulp, the air was calm again. It looked like the other pieces were already tired of waiting, and because there was no one to assassinate from the forest, Kaneko jumped from the forest and axe-kicked the blue-haired pawn down to earth. Everyone is gathered here, after all. She joined Issei and Akeno. Riser Phoenix's 1 pawn, retired. Grafia announced. Issei Hyoudou, I'm your enemy. The female delinquent started punching Issei with ridiculous force and power. Issei, however, was barely dodging her assault and bought time to boost his power. After making her angry because her attacks didn't connect, Issei received a wicked kick to the gut, sending him flying. He coughed a few times and stood up shakily. Seems like the princess had trained you well. You're quite durable for pawn, she smirked, while taking her boxer stance again. Well, yeah. Since I got trained with an unexpected demon, after all. He chuckled lightly and sent out a dragon shot she barely dodged. That was dangerous. I need to take him down here, right now. She thought, but Issei was already in front of her, touching her shoulder. Of course, he got socked, but with a victory smile, he mumbled. Breast break, Aya. She screamed in shame as her clothes disintegrated. Issei clapped his hands and thanked Mao for the treat and shot a dragon shot at her again, causing her to disappear in a bright flash. Suddenly, Issei's gauntlet glowed bright red. Boosted gear, second liberation. Drag announced. The gauntlet creaked like an upgraded machine and changed into a more dragonic form, with additional 2 gold fangs from it. Oh, this should be useful. Issei looked at his boosted gear too. 0. They got away. Kaneko said. Go after them. They're going for Butchu. Akeno flew there in full speed. When they arrived, they saw Akeno and Rias with burnt marks all over their body and Asia who was healing them. They looked relieved with Issei, Kiba, and Kaneko's presence. Sorry for the wait, Butchu. Hey, Crispy Akatori. Look here. Issei shot a dragon shot at Riser. He merely flew away of the way. Crispy, no one calls Riser that. He landed on the ground and unleashed a ring of fire nearby. Akeno put up a shield so they didn't get burned. Kiba. Yes, Issei-kun. He stabbed his sword to the ground and a trail of power raced towards Issei. He punched it and roared. Boosted gear gift. Transfer. From where he was standing, swords jutted out from the ground all around him and nearly pierced everyone of Riser's peerage. How about that? It's called boosted gear gift. He grinned in confidence. Announcer's room. Looks like Rias has cornered him. Hana said. Yuhe, are they sure to win? I can't be sure yet. That Crisp still has that smug smirk on, after all he leaned back. Battlefield. The orc was picked one by the queen until Akeno entered the fray and fought her one-on-one. Finally, she got defeated, but before she could even breathe, she was incinerated by Riser's flame. Issei faced Riser personally with his gear on. It's you and me, chicken. He used a stance. Huh. It's not like a vermin like you can ever stand in my way, anyway. He flew up with his flaming wings. He smirked smugly and hovered over the area, carpet bombing Rias and the others with flames. Announcer's room. Kaido slammed the table angrily. He gritted his teeth and looked at the screen with frustrated expression on his face. That naive redhead, she didn't do my homework. Everyone deadpanned, including Grafia. Hana came and put him to his chair and Grafia simply stared in amusement. I told her to win no matter whatever the way and her stupid pride is going to make her engage to that crappy chicken head. Idiot. Battlefield. Kiba. Issei grabbed Kiba and ran from a chicken's nasty carpet bombs. Rias and Akeno were hovering on air, throwing red blocks and thunder to him, but they didn't do much since he regenerated quickly. Asia also took cover below the roof and Issei was bringing him to her. Rias Gremory's knight retired. Kiba disappeared from his hold and Issei continued to march for Asia. Perhaps Grafia got distracted by that commotion Kaido made earlier. After he took Asia, he went back to the roof and saw a fierce battle between two queens. However, Akeno's eyes were diverted multiple times because Rias was having a one-on-one against Riser. She already took quite much damage and her Maiko clothes were tattered. Akeno-san, Butchu. Issei shouted. They pulled back as Akeno shot a magic circle which spewed out lightning on the way. Asia immediately healed them. Butchu. I've promoted to queen. Let's beat the Triser. He exclaimed. Alright. Let's do this. Akeno flew back to the action, completely revitalized and crazy mad. She fared against the already tired bomb queen and claimed victory by frying her in lightning. She disintegrated to blue particles after Grafia announced her retirement. It's too late, Kaido mumbled. His hunch was right. Asia was bombarded by Riser and she retired immediately. In short, their last string had been cut. Issei ran furiously to Riser and punched him square on the face. He punched him over and over again until he finally used a dragon shot at close range and blew off his head. Issei slumped down, but he didn't notice Riser's ashes formed ahead. He stared in shock as a fully formed Riser towered over him with a pissed-off face. You lowly scum, how dare you? His hands flared in fire. Uh-oh. Issei was about to get roasted when Akeno rained a volley of thunderbolts on Riser. Rias also launched a magic circle that amplified her magic considerably. As a result, the whole roof was leveled down to second floor. Ouch. Issei rubbed his head. He stood shakily. Riser suddenly grabbed his collar and threw him across the room. He slammed against the wall and started getting beaten up by that chicken. You scum, by the time I am done I'll have fun with all Ria's peerage. He punched him on every pause, which would sound very funny if Issei weren't beaten to a pulp. Issei's eyes lit up with hatred as he thought of Akeno getting molested by a KFC. He toughed out every last one of Riser's punches and shot a very nasty look at him. Rias couldn't bear to watch. All her peerage was terminated by this bird and Issei was being a punching bag for Riser. Stop, Riser. They both turned to see Rias in tears. She pulled Issei away and said, I surrender. Kaido went home with an extremely furious expression on his face. In the end, Rias didn't trust him enough to completely follow through. He was already searching so much to blackmail the damned Yakitori and win it, too. Verbal abusing was in line with raiding games, the fact was undeniable. All in all, every kind of tactics was legal in raiding games. So, it wasn't so weird to see the opponent withdrawing without a fight. He even toned it down to her liking and she didn't even use it. I'm home. He opened the window of his room, only to see Rainer sitting on his bed reading a book and Kuroka spinning around with his chair. Both of them turned to him and smiled. Except for Kuroka, that is. Naya. Kaido, pat me. Pat me. The Nekomata lunged at him like, well, a cat. Kaido caught her without falling and carried her back inside. It would be disastrous if his parents were to see it, after all. He looked at Rainer, who noticed his stare and lowered her book. So, how did it go? Bad. Very bad. Now she's going to get wed like a stuck-up princess to that vulgar yakitori guy, and I have exhausted my means to free her. She sighed, understanding how foolish higher-ups could be, especially a race with overwhelming greediness such as devils. Well, can't be helped. That's just how devils are. I know. But, still, I'm pissed. Rainer crossed her legs and closed one eye, adopting a smug look on her face. Knowing you, I expect some kind of twist for this. Kaido also smirked at his fallen and laughed lightly. My last trick depends on how much her brother loves her. If he lets her fall into that creep's hands, I can do nothing. A white magic circle with a grimoire symbol on it blazed on the floor, revealing a white-haired maid, Graphia. Her face was as stoic as ever, it was likely a part of her character. But, if her brother's queen comes to me for help, what can I do? The maid looked at him with a faint amusement in her eyes. She extended her hand, revealing a disposable magic portal. I trust you know what this means. Oh, but of course. He started cracking his knuckles. If you want to save my sister, then storm the hall, that's what my master's message to you. And from my own good luck. She left on her own portal after that. Now with the authority, all that's left would be equipments, and he knew where to find them. Before you go, have you done your daily maintenance? The sudden voice threw the whole room, save for Kaido, to total disarray. Rainer reflexively brought her fist up, smacking his face in, while Kuroka biting him out of shock. Ouch, quit shocking them. HMPH. You've become quite lively. But, back to the question. Have you done it? A man in blacksmith attire appeared in front of him with a hammer on his waist. He crossed his arms, showing off his firm and shaped muscles. I don't have much time, so you didn't. Kaido clicked his tongue in annoyance. Boy, I'm gonna do it later, so chill off. Don't worry about me. He opened the door and vanished. Rainer stood up and confronted the burly guy with hammer before he went. What's with this maintenance? What's wrong with him? So, he didn't tell anyone, as I thought. Did you know what happened in Kuo several years ago? I wasn't there. Well, I'll tell you. More than half of this town's population fell into deep coma, nearly a year of total panic and isolation. What? Indeed. That was a taboo for us to say this, but that was one of the few disasters the spirits have ever had to face. He eradicated the whole island from anything supernatural in one fell swoop, unintentionally. I heard the Kuo was built in mere 2 years, so it was before then. Wait, was Kaido a grade schooler when that happened? Yes. Imagine if he explodes now. And that kind of power isn't without a price. He might even take his own life in process. Being honest, she didn't care one bit about this shitty world. Before she met him, she was merely a female handyman for laborious works. No one actually cared about her well-being. Even if she died, no one would be particularly sad. But now, she had someone to care about, and she wasn't going to let it slip away from her grasp. Don't waste your tears on me. No, she never wanted to see that again. She didn't want to feel like that again. But, if she told him that, he'd just laugh it off and pat her on the head. And in the end, he'd somehow find a way to keep everyone safe, with him suffering alone. Yeah, that sounded like what he'd do. Meanwhile, Asia. Sorry for waking you, but I need some of your mementos from church. The blonde came out with red eyes. Sniff Kaido-san. Please come in first. Oops, excuse me. He entered the house, only to see Issei getting bandaged here and there like a mummy. He could see scorch marks and bruises on him, the severe ones at that. He was lucky he had Asia to heal him, or he might end up getting mortal wounds. He's in pretty bad shape, isn't he? Issei couldn't even get up from his bed. Kaido clenched his fist in rage. That freaking yakitori was going to pay, immortal or not. A game shouldn't be this brutal, especially when it was just a mock game between two families. Eye for an eye, blood for blood. You're going to pay dearly. Kaido-san. This is the item. Asia came running with a chest in her arms. Kaido opened it and looked at its content, then shoved them to his personal pocket. Thanks, Asia. Please win and bring Butchu back, Kaido-san. Kaido threw the magic circle Graphia gave to the floor, and a portal manifested. He smirked and jumped there, waiting for a while until he got transported. Yeah. I'm getting her back. He arrived just in front of the gates and man, they were enormous. He walked past it as it was opened. Maybe guests often came with portals, too. But, damn, I think the whole place was glistening, but they were all covered with silver and gold. Just how rich are they, anyway? His surprise was well founded. In his life, he never saw a place with gold-covered walls anywhere. And the sheer size of the place was astounding. He might even get leg cramps if he were to walk the whole place. Eventually, he reached a guarded door. This should be the hall. But, before he could enter the hall, he was stopped by several guards. It couldn't be helped, since he wore casual clothing there instead of a tuxedo. This place isn't for bimbos. Wasting no time, he raised his hand and lightly backhanded both of them. As a result, both were planted to the wall beside him. Oops, looks like I did get stronger by changing to dragon. Gotta be careful from now on. He walked inside without much resistance. Oh, there was a slight disturbance. All guards in the room immediately attacked him without warning after seeing him in casual clothes and not being a devil. Do you guys attack random guests, or it's just me? As he previously said, no big deal. The guards were either planted like a radish or embedded to a wall. Some were also sleeping near his feet. But, instead of being angry, a devil came out clapping. So, you came, thanks for answering my invitation. Meanwhile, what's with this dress? It's like I'm marrying him right off the bat. Riaz complained when she looked at herself at the mirror. She was stunningly beautiful, alright, but there was certainly a royal problem with the clothes. It was a pearl white dress with a low V cut on the chest, revealing the upper part of her cleavage, and a diamond cut on the back, revealing her back. She wasn't some store product to be shown. But, in a way, I guess I am. She looked at herself once again and pressed her hands on her wondrous assets. In the end, she wasn't able to break free of this damned engagement. Her dreams were crushed the moment she surrendered. At least Issei in Asia would be okay. Her dreams of knight in white horse, her desire and her pride as a woman, all shattered in front of her. I should have blackmailed that yakitori, after all. Now I feel bad for not using his materials. Her thoughts were halted when Razor came, but the maids managed to shoo him away. But, still, that damaged her mood even more. After the maids deemed her presentable, she walked to the portal and appeared on the stage beside her esteemed fiancé. What is this? She saw Kaido with several armed guards trying to apprehend him, with her brother smiling at him. Razor. I feel that my sister's engagement needs some more spice to it. So, I called him. And also considering the handicap my sister got. Razor clicked his tongue in displeasure. Don't tell me, are you unsatisfied with the results? Not at all. If I did, the game's rating would drop. I just want to present more entertainment for this party. Besides, you're the one who challenged me. He spared a glance at Kaido, who smiled back at him. Say, he's my sister's trainer. And with 10 days, he managed to raise their stats enough to match your entire peerage. Don't you think it might be interesting? Razor looked at him arrogantly. He thought it would be easy to just eliminate this whelp and ensure his powers in front of the guests here. It wasn't a bad deal, in fact, it benefited him. An anonymous challenger versus the esteemed Phoenix. Now that's what I'd call an exciting match. Very well. Kaido gave his answer almost immediately. It was his intention, anyway. Then, young man. What do you want as your reward? As long as it's within reason, I'll give it to you. Women, riches, or perhaps authority. Before he could answer, an elder raised his voice. But, Sir Zip-sama. There's no need to give this plebeian a gift. He's nothing like us nobles. May I remind you, elder? I am here to fulfill Mayu's invitation, and I'm not a devil. Thus, I stand on the same ground as you. We are both attendants to this party right now. His eyes constricted. Don't use your laws to bind me. It totally made sense, and the elder wasn't too stupid to press on and voice his demands. If he did so, Kaido would gladly and mercilessly strike him down verbally. If idiots required dirty languages to send out verbal attacks, he preferred using sophisticated words to make sure he was on higher position than his opponents. There are various ways to express something with words, after all. Looks like he's no ordinary kid, after all. It was right decision to trust him. I'll have her as my reward. He pointed to the bride. Sir Zetches smiled and raised his arms. Let the fight begins. Both Razor and Kaido were transported to a dimensional room personally made for this occasion. It resembled a huge chess, complete with large pieces. One would need to be a colossus just to lift the pieces, truly befitting of a heavyweight type of game. And I thought playing chess should involve brains, not bronze. Razor stood on a king piece, obviously trying to look cool. He failed, though, since the one in front of him was a guy. Brat. I'll leave you half dead in 10 seconds. Razor jumped and let loose his fiery wings. Kaido scoffed and flexed his muscles. Then, he raised his hand with a come on gesture. Yeah? Then, try it. The so-called Phoenix soared high and encased both of his arms in flames. Kaido simply waited for him to release his first attack. Eat this. The great flame of Phoenix, take it if you can. He threw 2 balls of orange flames at him. He sidestepped and suddenly disappeared from sight. The explosion provided more than enough smokescreen for him. Razor looked around, unable to see where he was. Show yourself. Fight me like a man. He started to flail his arms around, hoping to hit an invisible target. For him, anyway. Kaido was actually behind him. Like a man. His voice was like a bucket of cold water thrown to his neck. Before he even had the chance to turn back, there was already a gaping hole on his chest, with Kaido's fist sticking out from it. His hair shadowed his expression, but the spectators could tell his sinister smile beyond those black curtains. Say for yourself, idiot. They are you brat. Using his superior physical strength, he lifted him up and smashed him to the ground, leaving a huge spider crack on it, head first. He whistled. The Yakitori's head didn't get busted after all. Perhaps it's true that idiots had hard heads. A normal guy's head would break like eggs if I smashed him like this. Oh, my head's not for show. Yes it is. I'm making a show out of it now, aren't I? His mouth was completely shut by his cold remark. Kaido lifted him up again and smashed his other fist on his stomach, sending him flying to a pawn piece, completely obliterating it. 50% power release. He lifted the physical brain limiter on his body, giving him monstrous physical power. It was just physical power, though. A human is weaker than devil, but that was caused by an inborn brain limiter imposed to them. Humans could only use their partial strength, so of course they would be weaker than devils. In all actuality, humans were superior, or at least on par with devils in terms of physical strength. Now Riser. I'm going to get close and comfy, if you don't mind. His choice of words and attitude made the arrogant devil shiver wildly. He started throwing fire spheres at him endlessly while releasing his wings. Oh, no, you don't. Kaido dashed and created a katana from thin air. He quickly and accurately slashed all incoming spheres in half and stopped right in front of Razor. He stabbed the katana to his torso and spun hard and kicked the hilt of the sword. The sword lodged in his torso went even deeper and the guard halted it. Riser's body was also sent flying along with it, stabbing the queen's piece. He struggled to release the sword in his stomach since it was buried deep and his fire couldn't melt it off. I expect someone who has outstanding regeneration will have great pain tolerance, so I'll make this as painful as possible. His laugh sent even more chills on his way and he started to shiver again. Riser suddenly grabbed the sword in his stomach and started pulling it. He infused magic to his arms to make it stronger and finally chucked out the sword with a nasty grunt. He smirked smugly with 2 fireballs in his hands. "My turn, pleb guahh." Kaido was already in front of him and sent a devastating knee to his stomach. Then, an uppercut straight to the jaw, then a roundhouse kick, and finally he flipped and smashed his heel against his face, getting a satisfying crack from his cranium. As a result, Riser, especially the head, was buried 3 feet under the ground, from head to shoulder. But, that idiot still screamed and stood up again. This time, he even brought out his wings and flew up. Still trying, huh? Just give it up already. This time, Kaido sliced off both his arms and discarded his sword. Then, he clutched the fiery wings and tore them off his back. The brutality even made the spectators wince in pity. Now Riser was screaming and holding his back. Kaido was shaking a bit too. His current level of power couldn't hold off his physical strength any longer, anymore, and he might hurt his limbs. Sure, he could do even more than this all day, but his body would be sore as hell the next day. My swords aren't what they used to be, I'll just have to make do with this, then. He walked to a pawn piece and hugged it. With a grunt, the massive piece was lifted. Kaido held it with one hand and swung it like a baseball bat. And voila. Batter 1, Yakitori Ball 0. After that, he pulled out a vial of unknown liquid from his pocket and splattered its content on a katana he pulled out from Riser's torso. Seeing that simple action, Riser couldn't shake off the strange feeling he had. Whatever he was using, it was bad, really bad news for him. With all his might, he flared his wings again and soared out of his range. Seems like tearing off your wings is downright pointless, isn't it? He used simple magic to float around instead of revealing his wings. They look too much like Fullen's wings and it might make a lot of mess later. Using magic was the best alternative he could think of right now. Boy, lucky hits won't finish me. As arrogant as ever, that failed Yakitori. Even though his face was freaking messy. Suddenly, the world spun around him, followed by a major headache. He started to flail around and went in circles. His power dwindled and started to backfire on him. The downside of keeping your power sealed for too long, it'd slap you the moment you least like. Damn, I should have done my maintenance before the fight. He fell to the ground like some worn out rag and hit the stone floor with a loud thud. Being a certified opportunist and a prick, Riser didn't waste this chance sitting by. He disabled his wings and landed right on him, getting an unwilling gasp. By this time, Kaido's consciousness was already sunk deep into his soul. You've come. He landed on a dark room. He couldn't see anything, mostly because there was no light there. But, after walking for a while, his eyes slowly adapted and he was able to see for a bit what the room was like. The room itself was like a forgotten dungeon, lit by several dim torches. The flames itself wasn't orange, but gray, adding even more eerie feels to the room. Even then, his dragon eyes could barely see there. But, from the looks of it, there were 5 shadows inside the room, each in different locations. As he walked forward, the blurry images became clearer and clearer, to the point he could see their body, but how he wished he didn't. One was pounding the wall until his knuckles were skinned, showing bones underneath. Another one was sitting on the corner, hugging his knees while shivering desperately. Also, there was someone leaning to a wall, eyes devoid of all hopes with blood as tears. Another was sitting on a chair, wailing as he was incinerated in black and crimson flames, and the final one was a skeletal figure lying on the floor. However, there was a single thing they all possessed. They all looked perfectly like him. The shock was transferred to his mind, then his physical body. His real body was rolling around in agony, dodging Riser's attacks with pure luck. "Calm down, we don't want to roast you, hurt you, or do anything shady to you." Humming from a skeleton, that was unconvincing. But, he had no choice but to trust Skell 2 for now. The others also set eyes on him. It was a weird feeling, like you looked at yourself at several mirror reflections, but the reflections could move freely. And moreover, they were all like him, not wanting to begin a talk unless forced. "I heard you were facing that kid up there." He turned, only to see the burned up version of him facing his way. His expression was kind of vague, considering his face was ebony black, but anger was still apparent on his raspy voice. His flames burned hot, hotter than a phoenix's flame. All his lookalikes surrounded him in a pentagram formation, with him as its center. A magic circle formed under their feet, blazing hot with magma-like substance. The liquid glowed eerily, giving a little light to that helplessly dark room. "I see you're doing well, except for the lack of maintenance, your soul's like a broken glass right now. You're lucky we managed to pull you down here before it shatters completely." The skeleton version of him was a little more lively than the others, although he exuded most dreadful aura of them all. Perhaps due to being dead, he lost the humility, since living people's insults wouldn't affect him in the slightest. His skeletal figure proved to be flexible, mostly because he'd been making various expressions, like amusement, for example. You had to look to a grinning skeleton, really, it'd change your life. Wasting no more of their time, the glow brightened and changed to a sickly green color and circled him, of all people. The burning guy smirked insanely at him. "Boy, we might be apparitions, but you know, I'm mad at that crisp kid over there, so after you get out with all the powers we temporarily unlock, mind giving that guy a nice blow on the head? Show him who's boss and all." The skeleton sighed. "We'll unleash a little more of your power to stabilize your soul and act as a little power-up. Try not to use it too much, or you'll end up killing that bird out there. He's an arrogant prick, but still a great noble, with the whole underworld backing him. Just slap some sense about hunters to him, and it's all good." The space around him started to warp and turn white. "Lash out, kiddo. Say hello to him for us, okay?" The last thing he saw was the mad smile of the burned guy, before everything went black. He was back in his body, with some weird ticklish sensation on his back. He opened his eyes, only to see Riser's grin which should have made him get taken to the nearest asylum, while throwing fireballs at his supposedly motionless body. "I hear you're the so-called hunter. The ones who are shaping the history of the supernaturals from the shadows single-handedly, the so-called legend creators. It's a good thing I spied on Ria's training. But, in the end, hunters are nothing. Nothing compared to Riser." He couldn't help but silently laugh at the bird's stupidity. "This kind of flames is only good for cooking, not burning. Yet, he's still trying to do me in with this. Number majorl." In the end, he couldn't hold in his laugh and rolled on the floor while laughing like there's no tomorrow. Riser looked at him, dumbfounded and most of all surprised. After all kinds of attacks he launched at him, here he was, laughing his ass off without a care to this world, completely unharmed. For someone who was revered as one of the top achievers in the underworld, this insect had the gall to withstand his powers and on top of that, laughing it off like it was some kind of sick joke. After he was finally done with all the laughing, he stood up holding his stomach. Perhaps the warning about severe stomach pains due to overlaugh was true. Well, with that out of the way, he was finally able to serve a major ass kicking the tenants in his body, reserved especially just for him. "Alright, playtime's over, Riser Crisp. I'm gonna turn you into a pile of mush, whether you're immortal or not." But that shocking declaration, black mist started to surround him, from head to toe. The ground melted under the immense heat he exuded, and the mist itself was the very manifestation of his spirit flames as well. Just by getting touched by those mist, the marbles melted to a pile of goo without resistance. He dashed forward, disappearing and reappearing right in front of him, fist pulled. Riser didn't even have time to brace for the impact and was sent flying like an old rag to a pawn piece in the corner. He skidded down from the stone statue to the floor while writhing in pain, his body burning in some places. His punch didn't pierce through him like earlier, but it demolished his internal organs, so he took a lot more time to heal and was far more painful than before. "Feeling better, Phoenix? I didn't punch you all the way to the back, you know." Riser wasn't in good enough condition to respond. His stomach was still gurgling all over and he puked blobs of blood now and then. He held his burning stomach and tried standing up by using the statue as support. Kaido sighed and brought out 2 vials. "His regeneration trait is troublesome, guess it's time to use it again, huh?" He crushed both of them in his hands, drenching them in transparent liquid. But, because of the immense heat, it evaporated before it could drop to the ground. He raised his hands, coated in black and white mist. The devils looking showed immediate respond, jerking away from their seat. The mortal enemy of devils, holy water. Riser looked at him with scared eyes. As a noble, he'd known of that accursed item and the damage it caused to devils. One drop could burn off a devil's skin, and a vial could cause unavoidable death to middle-class unholy beings. Yet, he was holding that in form of a transparent mist circling his hands. How dirty using such items to fight me. Kaido scoffed at the desperate comment Riser made against him. He grabbed his collar, smashed him to the ground, lifted him again, then slammed him again like a worn-out rag. Don't get me wrong. A weak punch imbued with holy water is far better than a hard punch from me right now. Honestly, he was getting quite tired of this. Riser was a self-healing punching bag, sure, but all he was actually good for was his healing traits, nothing more. He didn't want to hold back. He summoned a magic circle connecting to his personal armory and pulled out a grey bastard sword with hoof-shaped guard. He spun the sword and stabbed it to the ground. Riser was already healed, albeit without half of his torso. His pain tolerance was at its limit and suddenly, something fell off his clothes. What's this? Kaido picked up the item that rolled to his feet. A small red crystal vial he saw in the raiding game between Rias and Riser before. In short, Phoenix tears. Even the crowd watching had similar reactions. He felt that too. Doubts, insults, disappointment, and even shame, all directed to the fallen noble. Ouch, that gotta hurt. Riser was humiliated right in front of the spectators, his parents and relatives included. Gritting his teeth, Kaido took out his sword off the ground and swung it in a wide arc, engulfing both Riser and the board. In an instant, all the scenery in that dimension was cut in half, along with everything that made this world. You see, Riser, you insulted my pride as a hunter, and my guys aren't too happy with that news. He brandished the sword, although it had a wide crack due to excessive power Kaido forced it to bear. He landed right beside Riser's bisected body and said, I've always wanted to know. If a phoenix's regeneration traits are so powerful, can they come back from a crumbling dimension? Would they still be able to reform after being separated beyond normal to dimension cracks? Lucky me, I get to test this theory. He smirked. And you, Yakitori, are my guinea pig. He let out a creepy cackle and wanted to watch until the guy disintegrated to nothing within the abyss of dimensional gap, but alas, to no avail. Stop. Riser's bishop, the blonde drill, flew to them and spread her arms, as if protecting her fallen brother. Please, don't you have enough already? This guy sexually harassed my client, verbally abused her, made you his piece, and basically beat the hell out of one of my very few friends. You still want to have a good-for-nothing like him as your brother? Ravel Phoenix bit her lip until it bled, noticing the bad deeds her brother did for fun. She couldn't defend her brother at all, because he wasn't really worth saving. As much as a bastard he is, he's still my brother. Kaido smiled and put his hand on the girl's head. He patted her a few times and turned back. Lucky you, Riser, having a good sister like her. I'm envious. Rias entered the fray and got them out of the crumbling dimension, while Ravel brought Riser out safely. I can't believe the griffin I prepared would be used as an escort instead of an escape mean. Youngsters these days are amusing, right, Grafia? Right, but, for someone to actually surpass the immortal Phoenix's regeneration, and we don't know about him. Sir Zetches looked his wife and smiled. Relax. I trust my sister's savior. That's all there is to it. Meanwhile, looks like you managed to get saved, huh? Rias looked up at her savior, who placed her in front of him while riding the griffin. Her crimson hair hid her beet red cheeks, but a rise of temperature didn't go unnoticed. Kaido put his palm on her forehead and touched his own. But you okay? Seems like you have a fever. I am okay, alright. Focus on flying. He obliged, because if the griffin decided to wiggle here and there, they'd plummet to their deaths like a pair of crazy bungee jumper, without a rope. As he turned back, he felt her leaning her whole body to his back, arms slipping to his waist. The sudden pressure slowly seeping to his back surprised him. But you? SHHH, call me Rias once in a while. His eyebrows twitched and he turned back, not wanting to let the Crimson Princess see his tomato-styled face. Rias, what's the matter? She let out a satisfied sigh and seemed to deflate silently. But the weight was still the same. It just felt that way. Her tension, stress, and tiredness were all blown away from her mind and body. He faced her and saw that for the first time, she was so relaxed, like all her worry flew out of the window. Nothing, it's just for the first time in my life, I feel so free. I'm not chained by my family's honor and duty right now. And all thanks to you. Kaido let out a hearty laugh as the griffin flew through the boundary of Underworld. It's fine. If you need another flight to free you of all this stress, I'll gladly do so no matter how many times. Princesses get stressed easily, after all. Hey, look at me. Her lips collided with his as soon as he turned to her. It was a smooth kiss, not forced one, like she'd always dreamed of. After a few long minutes, she pulled back and noticed that Kaido had already lost all colors from his face and started getting wobbly. He fell of the griffin. Out of reflex, she took over the control and swooped down, trying to catch Kaido before he reached the ground, and this fic turned to a horror. With difficulty, she hauled his body back to the griffin's back and let him sleep peacefully on her lap until they reached Kuo. I can only relax with you around, it seems. The griffin drifted off to the endless night Kuo had in offer. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.